Ismo, what's going on? Cheers. What you drinking on, Ismo? I got a little coffee myself. Oh God, am I like lagging here? My image quality is not that promising. What are the stats? But I do have to free up some distance. What's going on, Ismo? What's going on, everybody? Happy Mental Health Monday. It is late. Thanks for staying up. Anybody that is joining me right now. Fully intended on going live a lot earlier than this. But, you know, that's what happens with 3 kids and dinner time. And just some tomfoolery, I don't know. But thank you for joining me. This is Mental Mondays with Epis. Episode 24? Yeah, 24. 24, The Silent Battles of Depression. Alright, not sure how long I'll be going tonight. Just getting some last second things squared away before I get this show on the road. As always, I hope all of you had a beautiful Monday. A beautiful week going forward. How's that side profile look right now? There you go. Just monitoring my the streams and everything, making sure that everything is status quo. Looking good because on my end it's looking kind of choppy. What do you say? Let's move this. Get myself situated here. Thanks for joining me. 10:18 p.m. Eastern Time. About to hit this intro. Ooh, that's a lot. Got a little coffee to keep me awake here, because, you know, these late night streams be killing me, man. I don't know. I'm yawning about, you know, half an hour in, you know, but it's not gonna happen tonight. We got the coffee, we're ready to go. Alright, let's talk some mental. Alright. One more. Get this going. Oh my God. Sports news breaking. Mets are signing Devin Williams to a 3-year deal. That excites me. In no way does it excite me. Oh God. A little bit of an instant reaction. Alright, we're not talking sports. That's for another day. Oh, can't believe that just happened to me as I'm about to start. I got a lot to talk about in regards to that. So, but then we'll get to that in a minute. Wow, I just can't believe I stumbled across that. When the hell did this happen? 53 minutes ago? Oh my God, gross. Ay. If anybody's a Mets fan out there, you understand. Doesn't look like it's getting much better. All right. Jesus Christ. Oh, man. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me, whether you come for Twitch or YouTube or wherever you're catching some of these clips. Appreciate you for showing up. As always, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Keep those notifications on. And as always, keep showing up.
Wake up! You can't remember where it was. Has this dream stopped? love is my love.
Hope you find
Some kind of peace of mind. What's going on, everybody? It's your host, Matty B, Epis Radio. This is Mental Mondays with Epis, episode 24, The Silent Battles of Depression. Thank you for joining me on this late night. For those that are with us, Nisbo, thank you for stopping by, coming over from Twitch. Thank you for those that are with us right now on YouTube as well. Hope you had a beautiful start to the week. Hope you had a beautiful Mental Health Monday. All right. I intended on going a little bit earlier tonight, and it just didn't work out that way. I was really trying to get on about 7 p.m. ideally. You know, in a perfect world, 6 p.m., but I kind of knew that wasn't going to happen. And, you know, here we are, 10:22 p.m. Eastern. And we're getting in a show. And it's fine. It's a beautiful thing. Got my coffee. I'm ready to go for a little bit. Don't know how long we're going to go tonight. Play that by ear a little bit. Dubby was actually reaching out to me. My co-host over on the sports show was reaching out and asking me to go on late with him. I assume sports related. And I was just like, I'm still waiting to hear from him. I don't know. He's getting out of work. I'm like, all right, you know, I'm going to go live now, do my thing, and then, you know, we'll see if you're still, you know, Steve, I'm still around while he's, you know, when he's available. And obviously some breaking sports news, you know, going on in Mets land over here in Queens, which is, you know, a bit concerning. You know, I got a lot to talk about on that, so, you know, maybe I'll touch base with that towards the end of this show for those you that are listening, or anybody that cares. But this week I wanted to talk a little bit about really just depression overall, seasonal depression specifically. Now that the holidays are here, you know, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. You know, it's a time of the year which, you know, those that may have already been struggling, you know, with some mental health struggles, with some with loneliness and just, you know, those feelings of just solitude, not in a good way though. You know, it's that time of year where, you know, people are constantly reminded of their lost loved ones. You know, past relationships, things like that. These things creep up on you. You know, the days get shorter, the nights get colder. It's literally scientifically proven that, you know, you're losing out on valuable vitamins, you know, from the lack of sun. You know, they say almost, you know, to supplement that, to take, you know, vitamin supplements just to get, you know, make sure you're getting what you need in terms of that vitamin D, you know. So it's proven science to it. It affects you in many, many ways. Definitely affects our mood, our everyday, you know, how we go about our routine. It changes. I know for me, it's shaking things up with my marathon training. You know, definitely, you know, feel like it's shaking things up with the kids. You know, they, you know, don't go outside as much anymore because why? For one, it's cold. You know, two, it's already getting dark. You know, at a time in which during the summer where, you know, 6:30 you could be at the park, still hanging out, bright as can be. You know, now 6:30 rolling around, it's pitch black. You know, it completely affects the way we go about things and just our mental on the day to day. And, you know, for those that struggle with depression, you know, reminiscing about lost loved ones, this and that, you know, it's a very, very touchy time. especially for me, having lost a lot of the older, generational men in my life, and women, as a matter of fact, just a lot of older generation people in my family. My dad, my uncle, godfather, grandmother, grandpa. It's just it goes on and on and on. Cousins, it's saying the amount of people that are no longer a part of my life, in that way. Whereas there was a staple seeing these faces growing up during during the holiday season, right? Like just every year, seeing those same faces, being reminded of that, and for a long time, before my kids came along, I truly, that period in which my father had passed away, and this right before my father, it was my uncle committing suicide. It was him passing away, my father passing away to liver cancer. My godfather a couple of years later, lung cancer, and it was just so many things, so much loss in my family at the time. But right after that, I didn't want nothing to do with the holidays. I truly, it was a very depressing time. In that period, I suffered, mentally, a great deal because of it. Again, you're about to see it soon, but in my mental health video of the week, I do reference, suicidal thoughts on my behalf, and it's no joke. Those thoughts were real. Never did I act out. I mean, I guess there was, in some cases, definitely did act out. Not in the conventional or traditional sense, I guess you could say. And trying to hang myself or anything like that. But definitely did enough things, to warrant concern. And again, the holidays was just such a rough time for that. It was a constant reminder of the loss in my life, and and not knowing how to properly cope with that, and struggle with that for so long. My vice simply was drugs, substance abuse. It was easy. When I didn't have that, it was pretty miserable at times. Um, it was that nice little warm blanket that was put over you and just put you at ease. And I know I'm not the only one. I know there's a lot of people out there right now, struggling with that, constantly. Even in some worse cases, the loss of a child, things like that. In recent years, me and my wife have also experienced that as well. What helps, what's nice is that I have, I understand, that I have a lot to live for. I see it every day as a constant reminder with my kids. I see it in the eyes of my patients at work. I'd be a fool to, not realize that I should be grateful to be alive, should be, happy to be alive. But sometimes that in itself is not even enough. Sometimes, just even when it's right in front of your face, even then, depression, has that stranglehold on you, and it it consumes your entire being, who you are as a person, and sometimes it dictates what you do. Sorry, just checking my phone real quick. I was wondering if W was uh, coming in or not. before I show this video, in a video, I talk about, I reference the CDC and how annually is about nearly 50,000 people in the United States that commit suicide every year. Oddly enough, on the graph, and I could, pull that up, get that for you guys. On the graph, it says that the numbers actually tend to dip in the holiday season, which doesn't necessarily point to my argument, in terms of seasonal depression. But overall, it's still not downplaying it either, because the dip is rather slight, if you ask me. Because it's still, on average, in like the well above the 3,000s, at its lowest in December, about 3,500, people committing suicide. So like it's not really a number you want to stick to. Look, there's a little chart right here. I'll pull this up for you guys. Hold on. All right, that's good. All right, boom, right there. Now this is in reference to 2023, but the numbers are pretty much similar, and I'll show you the graph on that in a second. But it says over 49,000 people died by suicide 2023, one death every 11 minutes. Many adults think about suicide or attempt suicide. 12.8 million seriously thought about suicide. 3.7 million made a plan for suicide. 1.5 million attempted suicide. So, and that's 2023. You check up. Here is that full graph. Okay, suicide trends interactive chart. I believe right here is dark green. I should be able to take out some of the other ones. Where's the here's the interactive chart. Voila! Beautiful, but not really when you break it down as to what exactly we're looking at. Let me minimize this screen a little bit for you. A bit more, hold on. Okay. I like that. All right. So here you go. In case you're wondering, why don't we have 2025? Because 2025 is still going on, obviously. So they won't have an update till the new year. But 2024 provisional, all right, and 23 provisional. You can see there's the trend for 2024. All unintentional injuries. Let's go suicides, okay? Suicides. 2024. I guess they're still counting the September, October, November, Decembers. Is that what that means right there? The point in terms of provisional, because it doesn't. It's weird how it doesn't like show up, but then it shows up here on this one. Or is that where they start? Okay, they might have. So 2024 and 2023 numbers are actually still, I'm assuming, being counted. Is that what they mean by provisional there? Is that because if you take this off, you see that there. So you can see the trends up. All right, kind of an up and down swing, but all in all, you're starting back in January 2024, above 4,000, 4,031. And I have to assume that this does not count all of them. It only dipped below 4,000 per month, mind you. As you can see, the stat that I showed you before, 1 every 11 seconds in 2023. It only dipped under 4,000 in February. Maybe new year, new hope, new life, kind of, a little bit less. But you immediately back up. Springtime, March, April, May, slight dip in June, but still well above, that 4,000 mark at 4,098. And then high rising again. Late into the summer, probably see a trend there, up and down through the fall, and then maybe back down, in the November, December. You take a look at 2023. 2023 is actually has there, so it's okay. Still checking back on that 2024 then. But like I mentioned before, there is a slight dip November, December, which is interesting. A couple of hundred, as a matter of fact, especially in comparison to like August, where 4,416 people in 2023, and then dipping as low as 3,800 in November, December. So that's a big difference. That's a 600 person difference there. I don't know if it's necessarily a 2023 trend, or you see in 2022 a slight uptick. So it's interesting there. But more or less in the same ballpark. You're less than 1,000 on average, difference in terms of that swing, and every month ranging anywhere from 3,500 to 4,500 deaths per month. In my eyes, that's, far too much. It just shouldn't be. And why this is the case, I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but what I do know is that it just seems that more and more people are, not using the resources around them, or not knowing that these types of resources are even available, even when it is. Sometimes it's not enough. Like the title of my show today, The Silent Battles of Depression. Depression in itself is not always obvious. It's, you could be thinking that you're talking to the, happiest, most outgoing person in the world, and oftentimes those that are struggling with depression or mental health often are a bit extroverted, bit outgoing, charismatic, and you never know some of the silent battles that they may be facing. I myself for a long time, navigated that way. I thought, at times, I definitely wear it on my sleeve, but, a lot of times it certainly hid behind that smile or hid behind that laugh. I know it all too well. It almost in itself became a coping mechanism for such a long time. It's absurd to think about these numbers. To think about nearly 50,000 people suffer from suicide. Could you imagine the amount of people that are actually suffering from just depression alone, that don't act on it? I mean, you've seen that once, that just in the millions, back in 2023. Now, it's hard to, quantify that at times too, right? Like, how are they getting these studies? How are they, getting these predictions? Unless, you have willing participants, giving this information. It can't account for everybody, that's for sure. Tess from Twitch, what's going on, bro? Hope all is well, man. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Appreciate you, as always. Thanks for the lurk. Something has to be done. People got to talk more. People got to communicate more. On a more emotional level. You know, especially with technology and social media, we already know we don't do it enough, and it's so easy in this day and age to compare yourself to others, and you know, kind of put yourself in a bubble and point the finger at yourself, and wonder what it is you're doing wrong, or thinking you may not be good enough. I'm not saying that's necessarily something that I struggle with. Well, I would say one thing that I've been struggling with myself lately is, I was talking with my brother about it recently, is finding other like minded people. How sometimes, with like my fitness journey and even my content creating, it feel at times is very lonely in the journey. And I don't know why that is. Even if my engagement on social media was at a I mean, it might be different then, but like if even if it was at like an influencer level, I feel like I wouldn't feel much different about that. But I don't know though. That could change because then that might lead to engaging with and participating in certain activities with other like-minded people, which you know I do now. But I guess not on a scale in which I prefer. You know, um, it's hard as a male in their early 30s, with 4 kids, to like find other you know like-minded males or even females that are willing to participate in certain activities that I want to partake in. Making new friends at this age is a weird thing, as opposed to like when you were younger. I just felt like it was so much easier. I guess when you're younger, a lot more common interests. At this age, and just what you're doing at those ages, right? Like you're all kind of like doing the same thing now. In adulthood, you know, it's different. Status symbols in all of this. Who's got the higher income, who's got the house, who's who has a job, who doesn't have a job, who's making this amount of money, who's got the nice car, who's got the kids, the family. Like, there's so much room for judgment, and it's almost anxiety inducing, at times, trying to find other like minded people in this space. At least it is for me. It's overwhelming. The trying to find a direction to lead and all of that. It can also be overwhelming. I think a part of me, doing what I do with the podcast and all that is, really helped kind of just put myself out there, be a little bit more like, me in the present moment, and be free of judgment, you know, which is something that I struggle with, I think a lot of us have struggled with, at times, especially in our younger years. With that being said, you could be as free of judgment as you can, and still yet, not find other like-minded individuals that you connect with on a certain level. My brother said, we all operate on different frequencies, and that's a fact. I just certainly people we mesh with and people we don't. You know, it's just not always going to be a good fit. Um, but for a single person, no kids, no family, struggling financially, things like that, that weighs on you. It weighs on anybody, whether you got kids, you don't have kids. But I could see it in this space, nowadays how you know it can weigh heavily on your mind and you know take a toll on you mentally, and into this holiday season, make one feel extremely lonely. Um, it's tough, man. I just say that the best thing you could do, if it's you going through this, or somebody that's going through it, especially if you know somebody, the little things I would say matter. A phone call, random phone call, or even a text. Phone call is probably better, but some people, you know could be a bit introverted, whatever. They don't operate like that. Maybe they'll get back to you. I don't know, but guarantee you they're gonna, hear the voicemail. Guarantee you they're gonna read the message at some point, and whether or not they even respond, who knows? It could still, inherently make somebody's day, or just letting them know that you are thinking about them. Even if you haven't seen them in a while, these things matter. These things matter. I definitely have my fair share of friends that struggle with the seasonal depression for similar reasons like myself. Again, I wouldn't even say now that I don't struggle with it. Definitely on some level do. There's no doubt. I mean, the holidays truly will never be the same for me, because of losing my father, and losing, you know, certain family members and friends. Um, it will always, hurt. It always does. You've heard the saying growing up, time heals all wounds, and yeah, I hate to tell you the truth, but that's just not true. Um, Time just makes it easier to cope, but at any given moment, I am, you know, seconds away, from, crying, just thinking about, my father and all that. You could call me emotionally unstable. I find myself a little bit just more in tune with my emotions. The fact that I can go to that place, because it just means I still care. You know, if I didn't, a part of me would feel that, yeah, I don't just, it doesn't affect me as much anymore. It doesn't bother me much as, and that in itself is slightly concerning. I don't expect just you had a lost loved one in it, and you drop of a hat, you could just start bawling. you know. But I mean, like, all it takes is a certain song to come on to trigger that, you know. For me, if Neil Young, Old Man, comes on, no, forget it. Like nowadays, actually, I will, if I really don't want to go there, I really don't want to think about it, I will skip the song. I'll keep it moving. You know, just for my own sake. It really It's not something I want to be listening to, you know, around, you know, other people and things like that. At work, if that comes on, best believe I am skipping that immediately. It's not that I don't like the song, whatever, but it just takes me to that dark place that, you know, that's not always, you know, where I want to go at that time. You know, sometimes I'm okay with going there. Sometimes I'm okay with feeling it. You know, I allow myself to feel it. I allow myself to just bask in that, and that's a good thing. You need that. And you truly do. Before I keep it going, let me play this week's mental health video of the week. Kind of late on it in today's show. I've been just kind of rambling a little bit, and you know, thought I may need to. You know, why not? The coffee's hit the bloodstream, so the caffeine is working. No yawning yet. So why not keep it moving? All right. Again, just want to thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight, whether you come from Twitch or YouTube. All right, got a little Mental Monday action with you. Episode 24, The Silent Battles of Depression. If you struggle with depression, let me know. Hit me up. Hit me up in the comments right now. Talk a little bit about it. What are some of the things that you do to help cope? You know, you got any advice for others? Or you're just looking for somebody to talk to? I'm here for you. And again, for those of you tuning in, you know, on the non-live and tuning in during the post, same thing applies to you. Reach out, hit me up, drop a comment, keep the conversation going. As always, it's a beautiful thing. All right, this is this week's mental health video of the week. If you haven't already done so, go check it out. Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. It's all over. All right. Check it out. I'm thinking a lot lately about those who are no longer with us, and it's, I guess, a sign of the times with seasonal depression kicking in. And the truth is, you know, it's like that for a lot of people. Just last year, the CDC reported for 2024 that nearly 50,000 people committed suicide. That's roughly, you know, 4,000 plus a month. I think the exact number was in that 4,800 to, you know, 9. It doesn't matter. It's too much. It's too much when we're packing out, you know, baseball stadiums or indoor arenas with numbers of people who committed suicide each year. We need to do better as a nation. We need to do better as friends and as neighbors and as acquaintances. There needs to be more help. You need to feel that you're not alone. I struggled with depression for a very long time and contemplated taking my own life at one point. And yet, I'm here, and I understand the importance of showing up and being here, but that doesn't mean that I don't fight those silent battles. And I know that's the same for you too. So please, speak up. Do whatever you can to keep on showing up, not only for others, but for yourself as well. Happy holidays, everyone. Keep showing up. I've been thinking a lot lately about those who are no longer with us, and it's, I guess, a sign of the times with seasonal depression kicking in. And the truth is, you know, it's like that for a lot of people. Just last year, the CDC reported for 2024 that nearly 50,000 people committed suicide. That's roughly, you know, 4,000 plus a month. I think the exact number was in that 4,800 to, you know, 9. It doesn't matter. It's too much. It's too much when we're packing out, you know, baseball stadiums or indoor arenas with numbers of people who committed suicide each year. We need to do better as a nation. We need to do better as friends and as neighbors and as acquaintances. There needs to be more help. You need to feel that you're not alone. I struggled with depression for a very long time and contemplated taking my own life at one point. And yet, I'm here, and I understand the importance of showing up and being here, but that doesn't mean that I don't fight those silent battles. And I know that's the same for you too. So please, speak up. Do whatever you can to keep on showing up, not only for others, but for yourself as well. Happy holidays, everyone. Keep showing up. Alrighty, there is this week's mental health video of the week. Please check it out. Go like it, share it, send it to your loved ones. Also, drop the info in the caption there, and it's on all the socials. Call or text 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. All right. There was actually some debate of taking that down during this administration. But as of right now, the line is active and ready to go. I do think they got rid of, I believe, the LGB hotline. There was some sort of hotline for them in that community specifically. And I don't think it's no longer active at this moment. So that's a shame there. But as if, that's creating so many problems for people. Probably just thought it was a useless, way of taxpaying dollars or whatever it is. Regardless, during this holiday season, again, I would say, maybe more so for people in the Northeast, or not Northeast specifically, but in the North compared to those in the South. Because, I wonder, I gotta ask, my boy Dub and see, hey, do you feel this? Does it feel the same during the holidays in terms of seasonal depression? Because here in the North, obviously, the cold alone will do that to you. I guess for him, down in Florida, it's getting darker earlier still regardless. But it's hot. It's hot. You're still getting, those hot days. It does get a little chilly, for them. Those Floridians, man. If it gets to like 50, forget it. It's like, it's Armageddon out, down there. They don't even, if they get even a dusting of snow, you can just shut the state down. I don't know. It's definitely how they be reacting down there. I myself, love the cold. But, I can't even deny the effect that the sun has, and that this not only the sun but just the warmth that the sun gives. Because plenty of nice sunny wintry days, and don't get me wrong, they're pretty good. I'll take a nice sunny 45. Blue skies. But it hits much differently. Summertime, a nice 70 degrees, 75 degrees and sunny. Again, and with the time of day and just everything that affects you with that, which is, up for debate, apparently, right? Like, why do we, really do the daylight savings time? Should we have it? Should we get rid of it? I know that's been a topic of discussion. If you're going to do that, you have to get rid of it, worldwide, but not really. Some states recognize it, some states don't. I don't have an answer on that. If it makes sense, sure, but, I'm all for a little bit more daylight, but at the same time, I've learned, how to just embrace the cold, embrace, the nights. I run a lot. I get out there. I still exercise. In this type of weather. Late at night. 6, 7, 8, sometimes 9, sometimes 10. Out there running or just doing whatever I gotta do. Getting a little time in. It definitely changes some things. Gardening, things like that. How much time I'll spend on certain other outdoor activities. And certainly when it comes down to it with the kids, they're inside more, so that in itself is a different dynamic. You try to get them outside. but even then, not the same. Yeah, I've seen, like videos online of like parents taking their kids to the park, like 6:30 on middle of winter or whatever, and they got like headlamps on and things like that. That's cool. Maybe there's the first yawn of the episode. There you go. It took 53 minutes. How about that? 53 minutes for the first yawn. All right. So the coffee's either wearing off or my body's just fighting back because it's like, nah, you've been up. I was up early today, which is also, another thing. Sleep, not good. Yeah, you need a good night's sleep. I did not get a good night's sleep. And, you know, these are also little things that matter. Your lifestyle changes, right? Ensuring that you get a proper night's sleep, 6 to 8 hours at least. In a perfect world, I would probably say that 7 to 8, 8 to 9 range. For me, kind of few and far between. I may have some other issues going on. Whether it be breathing wise, at night, because oftentimes I'm finding myself, waking up middle of the night, not necessarily just to go to the bathroom, but sometimes it is to go to the bathroom. But other times it's just random, wake ups, and I'm not really sure why. Could be from that, but that in itself has is a huge effect on your metabolism, your mind, your body recovery. If you're very active, you're working out, your muscle recovery, the whole nine. Your body's not getting enough rest, and it's just not functioning properly. And along with your brain activity, is all out of whack. And add that with a little seasonal depression, a little lack of sunlight, lack of light in the day, and you got a recipe for disaster, man. Throwing a family death, throwing this and that. You lose your job. Struggling with addiction, and you'd be surprised how quick that situation can run away from you. When I was a little kid, just dumb teenager, I guess you could say, or just a lost teenager, man, a lost teenager out there just trying to find his way. I didn't really. There was a time where I didn't really care about tomorrow, and not in a good way. It was living in the moment, but living in the moment to where this could be your last moment. You know, sniffing things and taking things that I knew had consequences. And it was one time where I went a little too far. And thankfully, I'm still here. But a part of me, knows deep down that that wasn't necessarily unintentional either. It was a lack of respect for myself and my life, and just, got to a point where the drug or the feeling that I got from the drug, was far outweighed my desire to live. And that's never a good place you want to be. That's never a place that is gonna breed positivity and breed growth. Certainly not the place you want to be for a person aspiring to run marathons or any of that sort. Yeah, I'm thankful for my kids, man. Truly am thankful for my kids because, especially my oldest one, because I just, when he came into my life, he probably came into my life at the most important time. I always look back on certain points of my life, and I say that was certainly a changing point, or that moment saved my life. Having my oldest son, Dylan. I have said this many, many times. You know, definitely changed my life for the better and put me on a course. That led me here. Um, that's why I don't regret having him at the age I did. Was it a great idea? Wasn't the best idea. We weren't ready for it as young parents. Me and his mother. I don't care what she says. you know, Pride has to be put by the side there a little bit. It was the truth. We're young kids, messing around, weren't ready, not thinking about the consequences of tomorrow. Even though, a part of us may have thought like, hey, we want this, but you don't really understand, till you're there, and you're actually doing it, or that kid comes right out on that hospital bed. You don't really understand the magnitude. That was yawn number 2. Rock on. 2 yawns. That means we're getting near the time, man. We're almost at an hour anyway. By having my son at that age, completely changed my course and put me on a better path. Without having him at that time, who knows? I may have been capable of taking my life. I may have just gone into a deeper rabbit hole of substance abuse, because it was shortly after that where you know I stopped partying in that sense. I stopped exploring and living on the edge a little bit, living experimental day to day. Really, it was probably one of the most. It's weird, oddly enough, is a time in my life where I was most present. Shout out to Jasper Obenza on YouTube. Thank you for the subscription. It is probably a time in my life where I was most present, but you know, wasn't living a very positive lifestyle. Go figure, right? Here you are thinking, oh, okay, doing, I'm living in the moment, this and that, but it's like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like, it's crazy. All the little decisions I've made in my life, that led me here. Thankful for it, but some very foolish, some very stupid. That I was just maybe on the lucky end. I think it's a lot of it too. You could call it luck, whatever, fortune, destiny. I don't know. Maybe there's a higher power, as they say, pushing the buttons, looking out for me. I don't know about all that. I like to pride myself on being a good person, but yeah, I don't know if I'm more deserving than the next. I know a lot of good people that are no longer with us. I can't necessarily say, I'm more deserving. I can't say it, because it simply would not be true. you know, all I can really think about, man, is that, we truly only have one life to live. And I see a lot of faces every day, and I think about the silent battles each and every one of these people are facing inside. And I try to just be mindful of it. Even when I'm having a bad moment, I gotta retract and self reflect a little bit and understand that, hey, you're not the only one, going through something. Um, because you're not, for them, your life is truly insignificant. Everybody is the center of their own universe, and it's just you're just kind of living around them, man. You may think people are, may care more about you. I'm like, there's people that care, but at the end of the day, in the grand scheme, in the whole big picture, everybody's living their own life. Everybody's on their own journey. Like I said earlier, sometimes that journey can feel awfully lonely. But one thing I think we can all relate on, and all find common ground, is a topic of depression. Because depression, it has no boundaries. I don't care how much money you have, how much money you don't have, what job you have and don't have. Depression slips through the cracks, manifests, finds a way. It's deeply rooted in you, no matter what. Whether you're high up on the social ladder or the bottom of the totem pole. It has no limitations to who it goes after. And we may think, we're strong. We may think, uh, we would never succumb to taking our own life or hurting ourselves. But you really never know until you're right there and it's happening to you. That's how it happens a lot of the time. It's not something that is just, on a whim. This is what I'm gonna do. It's something that slowly creeps up on you. That's been manifesting for a long time. You know, and you don't talk about these things. It keeps on just adding a brick to that foundation, and just one day, it's either gonna just outgrow itself, or it's to the point where it's done and ready to explode. I encourage you, if you're, again, going through this yourself, to speak out. Talk to anybody, a friend, a neighbor, random person on the street. Strike a conversation. Be respectful, mindful of their personal space, things like that. Learn how to read a situation. Don't just go up to random strangers, start, pouring out your problems to them. Find a way in. There are support groups, things like that. Online forums you could be a part of that, maybe will steer you into a live meetup, something like that. You know, programs you could do, meetings you could go to. Depending on where you live, a lot of professional help available to you. Cost could be a factor at times, which I think is also what lies into the problem. Something that I also didn't bring up. You know, I want to be very careful too on how I approach it too, because again, you know, I'm not, you know, I don't have a degree in medicine, so you know, I can only go so far into this conversation. But prescribed medication, you know, something that is designed to help combat depression, that ultimately leads to other mental disorders or you know, social, you know, disorders like anxiety, things like that. You know, you're out taking these drugs prescribed to you in hopes that, you know, make you interact better, or you know, just you know, you're more capable of functioning in public, things like that. People with severe ADHD, things like that. Sometimes it's warranted. Sometimes it's conflicting. Certain situations, you have doctors prescribing multiple medications, and they're not even aware. They're not communicating with each other, or they're not communicating to the patient of the potential side effects, or even worse, not knowing that some of these medications may have contraindications that can lead to other issues. That in much more rare cases, but I don't think that suicide being so high and prescribed meds in today's society, you know, being up there as well, I don't think that's a, you know, a coincidence at times. I don't think, you know, we're really focusing on the core issue at hand. They oftentimes it's here, take this pill and feel better. Well, you know, in my eyes, like what's the difference in terms of having a smoke or having a drink? You know, sniffing a line, even, like, it just, you know, that's a little exaggerating, but not really. You know, some of these prescribed meds is some pretty strong sedative stuff. You know, I would know. That was kind of my thing. You know, love me some pharmaceuticals, but addictive as shit. And I don't know. I just don't see the upside. You know, especially health wise. You know, for somebody taking prescribed meds long term, can't be good for your liver. You know, amongst other things. I just feel like now in today's day and age, we're so quick to diagnose, and treat. Um, you know, with pharmaceuticals, with a medicinal approach outside of a more holistic approach, where hey, you know, like, you know, focused therapy and things like that. You know, like really getting down to the root of an individual's issue. And society's perception has a lot to do with it as well. I still think we live in a time that the m- the male figure or even female figure, more so male, but with the males, I still feel like we're living in a time that, oftentimes you will get scrutinized for being emotional or being sensitive. I tend to think that a female likes a man in touch with his emotions, but sometimes in cinema you be you know told otherwise, to where you need to be tough. You need to be the provider, be strong, not cry, not feel hurt, or even if you are, show that you aren't. There's one mental health Monday. I might have to repost that one because I don't think it got enough play a while back, but I loved it, and it it talked exactly about that. It talked about when is it okay to not be okay, and specifically for the male in today's society. I think it's too much of a stigma in our society still that you know we have to be these hunter and gatherer type, this you know emotional wall that's impenetrable. And again, man, it's so not the case. I feel like you see a lot of suicides in police department because of that. Because you got a lot of these guys dealing with certain traumas that they're afraid to just speak about because they're afraid to be scrutinized by their own brothers, their own brothers and sisters in their department. You can't tell me that's not a thing. Of course, that's a thing. I've heard it from current and former men and women in uniform. Shit, I had, former NYPD officer on here on the show and talking about it. Talking about suicide in the department. Shout out to Kenneth Singletary. Go check that episode out. Matter of fact, you can find which one that was. I know for sure that goes on. And it's not only in cops. By the way, that was, that was 3 months ago, that episode. That's wild. Or that was when I put out the short. Yeah, 3 months ago. Let's see. What episode is that? Episode 32. Wow. Episode 32. Go check that out. It's a great episode. Kenneth Singletary talks about it. I also put out a long form video around the same time talking about it as well. Okay. So, retired officer, pursuit of God and mental health. Check it out. I hate the stereotypes that society still puts on us like that, and I feel it just I don't. It's the feeling I get when I'm on social media. At least maybe it's my algorithm, maybe it's the thing, and that could be a thing too. Like I've talked about that before. Really, limiting the type of content that you expose yourself to. You know, negativity manifests negativity. Positivity manifests positivity. If you surround yourself with like-minded people that are positive, uplifting, if you're watching content that's positive, uplifting, how do you think it's going to make you feel? You're going to start to feel uplifted and more positive. It seems simple, and at the core, it really is. It really is. The problem is surrounding yourself with those types of like-minded people in your everyday. You may start to realize, and something that I have in my life, that I'm around a lot of people that are not on that same frequency. I'm not saying that they're not intelligent, because I'm certainly not claiming myself to be the most intelligent person. Far from it. I like to think of myself as educated to a certain degree, keep it real, you know, smart enough to not feel stupid. Yeah. Yeah. But dumb enough to know that I am. Hey. That was stupid. you know, you gotta keep it humble. You gotta understand that there's a lot of outside factors, and one important thing that you really can do to help yourself and help combat that depression or whatever it is you're going through is just manifesting the positive in your life. During those years of depression and suicidal thoughts, it was just constant negativity. It was just a shitstorm of hail and rain and snow. It just constantly hanging over my head. I'd wear it on my sleeve as if it was my everyday. It was self-loathing. It was where my comfort resided. I felt comfortable in that state. Now, I'd feel uncomfortable staying in that state, and more so because I would notice the immediate effect it has on the others around me. I think at that younger age, I didn't really care about anybody but myself. Now I feel like I care about everybody but myself. At times, I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit on my end, just so that or somebody else is comfortable. I'm willing to sacrifice a bit of my own happiness and peace in hopes that I can achieve that for somebody else. Nice, but not always the best thing to do. Maybe a little too nice, so I've been told. So be it. But I'd rather be in that predicament than, be in a place of just constant negativity and self-loathing and just that helpless feeling of complacency and lack of direction, lack of respect for myself, the whole nine. Depression is a very, very dark place, and again, oftentimes it finds ways to creep on in. To recap on today's show, this is one of those times of the year where seasonal depression plays a huge role on how we navigate our lives. And it's very important that if you suspect any type of concerning behavior from a friend, family member, to reach out to them. Sometimes, again, it doesn't require much. Don't overthink it. Simple phone call, a text, a random pop in, sending them a gift, maybe, hey, I'm thinking about you. They may not get back to you right away, but I promise you they will see it. And hey, you just might make somebody's day. And for those that are struggling on a day to day, fighting those silent battles, feeling like you're alone in a big room, there is help for you out there. There are services you can seek, people you can talk to. Again, call 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You could text them as well. Don't hesitate. Reach out if you're having suicidal thoughts. Reach out if it's something that just even slightly crosses the mind. Talk about the things that are bothering you. Don't suppress it. Don't let it keep it bottled in. It does nothing for you. You may think you're strong for doing it, and that's certainly one way to go about it, but you got to get down to the root of it. And the only way you can do that is by addressing it and understanding that what you're feeling is human. Because it is. You are human for feeling the way you are feeling. That's probably the biggest part of it all. Just understanding that you're not alone in this thought. There's certain degrees to it, obviously. Again, other people's journey, other people's battles that they're dealing with. Don't compare your depression to others. But hey, it could be a good teaching moment that perspective is key. Because everybody is going through something, right? Just when you think you're having a bad day, somebody's having an even worse day. I had a reminder just like that today. One of my patients telling me that they were told they had months to live. And here we are, going on 3 years now and still kicking. But still fighting that fight. For her, tomorrow truly is not guaranteed. Here I am, where tomorrow's probably a guarantee. Or at least for now it is. And I may be willing to sacrifice all of that. And it may seem justified in your head at the moment. It may even seem like it's the easier route to take. But I promise you there's more to live for. And at the very least, live for yourself. Because you can. Because others wish they could. There's a good friend of mine that passed away a couple years ago, and in times like this, he's a great reminder that I need to just shut the hell up and keep on moving. It's a great reminder for me to keep perspective and be like, hey man, he wishes he was around to see his kid grow up. I know, when I lost my father, for years and years and years, I was mad at him because he won't, he didn't get to see his kid grow up. So don't become another statistic, is what I'm trying to say. We all fight in those silent battles. Or keep on fighting those silent battles. Talk about it. You just might find that you have more in common with others than you think. Or you might just help somebody in the process. Most importantly, man, and I'll end it on this. We're over an hour. Oh, wow. An hour. Coming up on an hour 30. Wow. Like another 30 minutes just went by. Crazy. Keep showing up for yourself. It's been a huge mantra of this show. It was something I started, when I was going through some troubles with my oldest son. I had come across somebody say it online, keep showing up, and it kind of just resonated with me. And I know it's something that I've inherently just been living by my for all my years after my dad passed away. I just didn't even see it back then. Because I didn't have that drive, I didn't have that will to live. But when I did, I understand that I needed to keep showing up, not only for myself, but for my kids. And for the ones that, that love me and cherish me. I have a good friend of mine, he's told me time and time again, I almost hate him for it, that I can't go anywhere. And I say that jokingly, that I hate him for it, but I love him. But he's confided in me that without me, it would be tough for him to continue to live. And shit, man, I get it. I get it. I get that feeling, and I'm happy that I could be that person for somebody. Um, Again, it is a constant reminder that you know there there's a lot more to live for than you think, and even when it's not so obvious, the obvious thing to live for is you. You just gotta look deep within yourself and see that. But talking helps. Keeping all those emotions bottled up inside and pushing it to the side is only going to eat away at you and lead you down a very dark and lonely road. So this was a tough one. This was a tough conversation to have, but a necessary one. I really, you know, just felt the need to bring some awareness to the whole suicide thing. Um, Again, I feel like it's not talked enough. I talked about it at the top of the show. A whole CDC, nearly 50,000 people a year in the United States. That's not even worldwide. I can only imagine what that number is. But in the United States alone, nearly 50,000 a year, and this has been going strong for you know at least the last decade. I mean, you're almost talking one death every 11 seconds. 11 seconds. Just wait a couple of more seconds. Somebody just killed themselves. I mean, like, that's absurd. It's an epidemic in itself. Now, we don't talk about enough, I feel like. And I just, I thought something called to me to talk about it, thinking about the whole seasonal depression thing. And I just, I was like, all right, it fits. It's good. Let's talk about it. This is really, truly mental health. It's why I started this show. Again, it's affected me on a personal level, having, my uncle kill himself, friends kill themselves. A couple of college friends of mine, that I knew very well, gone. I've heard plenty of other stories, family members, all that. It's tough, man. And a lot of, I know, somebody reached out to me tonight, a good friend of mine. I didn't even know her uncle had killed himself. So, again, on a level I can relate. We're all dealing with these battles, man. Whether it's you personally or just, you're affected by somebody's actions in this realm, we can all relate on that level, and that's why it's important to talk about it, because oftentimes people in this situation, they feel like there's nobody to talk to, or they get scrutinized for doing it. So a lot of people come from traditional backgrounds where these types of conversations are not even entertained. Thankfully, I had grown up in a household where it was not frowned upon to talk about your feelings. It really wasn't. In fact, it was encouraged. My dad was good at that. He may not have been the best at it. I'm sure my mother would have some choice words. But he would give it to me straight. He would talk to me, and he was not afraid to get. I've seen my father cry. He's cried, in front of me multiple times. Why I feel like I'm able to do so. And see if that carries over into my children. I know my oldest son, he's not one to be emotional, but I've seen even a slight shift in him as of late as well. I think, again, because having these types of conversations opens those doors, makes it feel more normalized than what it would have you feel like in today's society. It's not. I feel like more than ever now people are talking about it, but it's still not enough. So that's why I bring awareness to it. Because you hear about it. You can find podcasts galore on things like that, but still there's that stigma. It's a sign of weakness, and God forbid we show a sign of weakness, right? Well, I think that's it for me, folks, tonight. All right, it's been a good discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. Play it back, share it, like, comment, the whole nine. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe. A couple of subscribers here tonight. Jasper Obenza on YouTube. Appreciate you. Keep showing up. Keep showing up, man. Keep showing up for yourself. Keep showing up for others. Talk to one another. Be vulnerable. Be genuine. Have a unique conversation. Have an open and honest conversation with a complete stranger. That's part of why I love my job, because it gives me the opportunity to do that. I don't always want to engage in these types of conversations. Sometimes I stray away from it only because of the mental toll it does have on you. Sometimes I feel like I don't want to get too close to certain patients at times because I've already been hurt before. I'd rather not be hurt again. But it's rather selfish, because that very person that you may be just hiding away and shying away from talking to it, they didn't ask for this. They didn't ask for that stage 4 cancer. You talking to them might be the highlight of their day. So again, perspective is key. Just when you're trying to protect your own mental health, you might just, be helping others in the process. So always be mindful, man, of the silent battles that we're all facing. All right, everybody. That is it. I promise. That is my sign off. All right. Keep showing up as always. Stay tuned for this outro. All right. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Keep the notifications on for future shows. All right. Had a little sports news at the top of the show. Obviously, it's not the sports show, so we're not going to get into that. I'm going to save that for another day. Got plenty of time to talk about my Metsies and the turmoil that goes on in this franchise. Oh, man. Looking forward to this Friday. Might have a show. Guest speaker coming on. He's a former guest of the show. Kevin McCloskey. He was on episode 33, episode sports. Episode sports. Could be a return guest on the show this Friday night, so stay tuned for that. All right, again, I appreciate all the love. 40,000 strong on YouTube, so keep it coming. Keep showing up as always. It's your boy Matty B, Epis Sports Radio. Thank you for watching Mental Mondays with Epis. Until next time.
Wake up! Is every number where it was? Has this dream stopped?
Hope you find some kind of peace of mind. Hope you find.
All right, everybody. Hope you can find some peace of mind. Thank you for joining me on Mental Mondays with Epis, episode 24. If you like what you watch, please like, comment, follow, subscribe. Until next time, keep showing up.
Some kind of peace of mind.